When Ken Buchanan first laced up his gloves, he wasn't handed an easy path. He fought where he could, took on whoever was in front of him, and carved his reputation one punch at a time. His journey didn't begin under grand spotlights or with the world watching. It started in smaller rings, against fighters no one would remember. Yet, with each bout, he proved he wasn't just passing through, he was building towards something bigger. From the moment he stepped into the professional ranks, knocking out Brian Tonks in London, he set the tone for what was to come. He racked up wins, grinding his way through England's boxing circuit. But home had been calling. By the time he finally fought in Scotland, outpointing John McMillan in a hard-fought 10-rounder, the message was clear. Ken Buchanan wasn't just another name on a fight card. He was a fighter to watch. There comes a point in every fighter's career where the wins start to mean more, where each step forward isn't just another fight, but a climb towards something greater. Ken Buchanan had been stacking up victories, one after another. But he wasn't fighting just to fill up his record. He wanted something real, something that mattered. By the time he stepped into the ring with Maurice Cullen, Buchanan wasn't just another contender, he was a man on the verge of a breakthrough. The British lightweight title was at stake, and he made sure there was no doubt about who deserved it. 11 rounds in, he landed the punch that ended the fight and announced himself as more than just a local star. He was now a world-ranked contender. But boxing has a way of humbling even the best. Buchanan kept pushing forward, beating top names like Leonard Tavares, Angel Robinson Garcia, and Ivan Whiter again in a rematch. Everything was moving in the right direction until the night it wasn't. On January 29, 1970, in Madrid, he faced Miguel Velasquez for the European lightweight crown. It was a hard fight, one that tested him over 15 rounds. When the final bell rang, the decision went against him. A setback, but not a stopping point. A loss in boxing can either break a fighter or sharpen them. Buchanan chose the latter. He went right back to work, avenging his loss to Tavares and adding more wins to his name. He knocked out Brian Hudson in 5 to defend his British lightweight title, proving he wasn't going anywhere. He had come too far, and there was still unfinished business ahead. Some fights are won before a single punch is thrown, not in the gym, not in the ring, but in the minds of those watching. When Ken Buchanan traveled to Puerto Rico to face the dangerous Ismael Laguna, most believed he was already beaten. The heat, the champion's speed, the conditions, too many obstacles, they said. But Buchanan wasn't one for excuses. He came to fight. On September 26, 1970, under the unforgiving San Juan sun, he did exactly that. For 15 grueling rounds, he went toe-to-toe with Laguna, matching his skill and outlasting his speed. When the final bell rang, the judges saw what the doubters had missed. Buchanan had done the unthinkable. He was now the lightweight champion of the world. But being a champion wasn't just about winning the belt. It was about keeping it. And for Buchanan, that wouldn't be easy. A feud between the WBA and the British Boxing Board of Control meant he couldn't defend his title at home. So, he kept moving, staying sharp. Before the year ended, he outpointed Donato Paduano in a non-title fight, proving he wasn't slowing down. Then came Los Angeles, February 12, 1971. Across the ring stood Ruben Navarro, a tough challenger with everything to gain. Buchanan wasn't just defending his title, he was chasing more. By the end of the night, he had his hand raised once again, but this time, there was more to celebrate. The WBC belt was now his as well. Ken Buchanan was no longer just a champion. He was the undisputed lightweight king. With recognition finally catching up to his achievements, the door opened for a fight back home. On May 11th, 1971, at Wembley, he faced former junior welterweight champion Carlos Muraco Hernandez. Buchanan didn't need the judges this time. He ended the fight in the 8th round. Another statement that the title belonged to him. But champions don't just fight to defend. They fight to prove, to silence doubt, to push forward. And for Buchanan, the journey was far from over. Champions don't just fight for titles, they fight for control. And for Ken Buchanan, control was slipping away. He had climbed to the top of the lightweight division, fought his way to undisputed status, and defended his crown against the very man he had taken it from, Ismael Laguna. But boxing isn't just about winning in the ring. Politics had a say too. On June 25, 1971, Buchanan was stripped of the WBC title for not defending against Pedro Carrasco. Just like that, half of his championship was gone, not lost in battle, but taken outside the ropes. Still, he held on to the WBA belt, and when Laguna came knocking for a rematch, Buchanan was ready. This time, the fight took place in New York, and once again, Buchanan proved he had the Panamanian's number. Another decision victory, another title defense. The belt stayed with him. Afterward, he took a couple of fights just to stay sharp, one in London, the other in South Africa. The Johannesburg bout was barely a contest. Andrew Stein's corner threw in the towel in the third round, knowing their fighter had no chance. But all of this was just a lead up to what came next, the night that would define Buchanan's career, for better or worse. June 26, 1972, Madison Square Garden. Across the ring stood a 21-year-old from Panama, a hungry, relentless fighter who had never tasted defeat. His name was Roberto Duran. From the opening bell, Buchanan was in a fight unlike any he had faced before. Duran didn't just come forward, he swarmed, pounded, and bullied his way inside. Buchanan, as skilled as ever, tried to keep the fight at his range, but Duran's pressure was suffocating. The rounds piled up, and Duran was ahead on the cards. Then came the moment that would be talked about for decades. At the end of the 13th round, after the bell had sounded, Duran threw one last punch. It landed low. Buchanan collapsed in agony, but instead of being given time to recover, the fight was waved off. Referee Johnny Lobianco declared Duran the winner. Some called it justice. Some called it robbery. The New York Times' Red Smith put it simply: in American boxing, anything short of pulling a knife is regarded indulgently. Buchanan had lost his title, but the way it ended, controversial, brutal, unfinished, left a wound that would never quite heal. A champion without a belt is still dangerous. Ken Buchanan had lost his title under bitter circumstances, but he wasn't going anywhere. If anything, the controversy against Roberto Duran only made him more determined. There was unfinished business, and until he got his rematch, he would keep proving exactly who he was. 3 months after the Duran fight, Buchanan returned to Madison Square Garden, where he faced Carlos Ortiz, a legend of the lightweight division and a former 3-time world champion. Ortiz had seen it all, but on September 20th, 1972, he saw something he couldn't handle. Buchanan broke him down and stopped him in 6 rounds, delivering a reminder to the boxing world he was still one of the best. He kept up the momentum, finishing the year with another victory, this time outpointing Chong Kil Lee on December 4th, 1972. But behind the scenes, the fight Buchanan really wanted, the one that should have already been signed and sealed, was slipping further away. Duran had originally agreed to a rematch for October 20th, 1972. Then he backed out. The Panamanian government wanted his first title defense to be on home soil, so he stayed there and knocked out Jimmy Robertson in January 1973. Another contract was signed this time. Duran promised to defend against Buchanan by June 30th, 1973. Again, he broke it. The New York State Athletic Commission had seen enough. On April 4th, 1973, they suspended Duran's license and warned him that his title could be stripped if he didn't face Buchanan. Still, Duran wouldn't budge. For 2 years, the commission tried to force the fight. For 2 years, Buchanan waited, but the rematch never came. Some losses fade with time, some never go away. For Buchanan, this one would linger. For Ken Buchanan, boxing was never just about titles, it was about proving himself, time and time again. And after the frustration of being denied a rematch with Roberto Duran, he did what true fighters do: he kept moving forward. In 1973, Buchanan returned to familiar territory, stepping into the ring with a rising force in British boxing, Jim Watt. It was a grueling 15-round battle, but Buchanan showed he still had plenty left. When the final bell rang, his hand was raised, and with it, the British lightweight title was once again his. But he wasn't one to stay in one place for long. Buchanan packed his bags and took his skills on the road, fighting across the United States, Denmark, and Canada, racking up win after win. The journey led him to Italy, where European lightweight champion Antonio Puddu stood in his way. After another hard-fought 15 rounds, Buchanan left no doubt. He was now the European lightweight champion. He defended the belt in Paris, where he faced an old rival, Leonard Tavares, for the 3rd time. This time, he didn't need the judges. He ended it in the 14th round with a knockout. From there, it was on to Japan for another shot at the world title. But on that night, Guts Ishimatsu had the upper hand. After 15 rounds, the decision went against Buchanan. For most, that would have been the end. Another champion rising while the old one faded away. But Buchanan wasn't done yet. He bounced back with a knockout win over Giancarlo Yusai to keep his European title. Then, just as quickly as he had climbed back into the spotlight, he stepped away, retiring from boxing in 1976. For 2 years, he stayed out of the ring, but the itch to fight never left. In 1978, Buchanan returned, winning 2 straight fights before facing Charlie Nash in Copenhagen. It wasn't the same Buchanan. The sharpness, the speed, it had faded just enough to make the difference. He lost by decision. Still, he pushed on. In 1980, he put together 2 more wins, but after that, the losses started piling up. 5 in a row, the last coming against George Feeney in 1982. That was the night he finally walked away for good. His record was set, his story written. And though the end of his career may not have been the fairy tale finish some imagined, time did what boxing never could have gave him his due. In 2000, Ken Buchanan was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. 2 years later, he took his place in the Scottish Sport Hall of Fame. The belts, the battles, the controversies, they all became part of boxing history. But to those who watched him fight, Ken Buchanan was never just a champion. He was a fighter through and through. On April 1st, 2023, at the age of 77, Buchanan died after suffering from dementia.